You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Kraft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Kraft.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast, and thank you so much for joining me today. I have another fantastic guest, and this is Mandy Harvey, and Mandy brings some amazing miracles through her story to us. Right now, she's a speaker, a teacher, a healer, guiding highly sensitive, overachieving, chronically stressed leaders on their healing journey. And I want to say the reason why we have that definition is because that's who she used to be. All of us, our clients, are a reflection of who we have been, right? So that we can absolutely identify with them. So hello, Mandy.
Hi, thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, it's going to be so much fun. But what we'll dig into is I was the same way. I was type A. Everything had to be perfect. I remember one boss at one time saying to me, Gail, 80% is fine. Let go of the project. And I'm like, no, my work has got to be better than 80%. And she said, Gail, there are projects waiting in line for you to be available. Let go of the project. Right. And it was the first time that I did that. And it was like tearing my heart out. It was, right?
Yes.
And it's just not ready to get out of the incubator yet.
Yes.
Right. But that's because, as a child, I was at a very young age, and, I won't get into the details of the story. That's a whole other podcast. But at a very young age, I took on the responsibility of being the person to keep balance and peace in the family. I was the baby of the family, and my siblings were adults when I was born. I have a nephew older than me.
Yeah.
And I am taking on the responsibility, right, to keep trauma and the incidents that happened because of that, the choices I've made, the stress I went through, and it took years. And even to this day, every once in a while, I will say, Gail, you don't have to be the one carrying all the weight. You can let that one go.
Yeah.
Right. And I only know that through my body. And that's something else that we're going to talk about. So, Mandy, you became a type A personality. What was the training ground that you had to get you to think that you had to be perfect?
Yes. I mean, similar, all from childhood trauma. I was born into an environment where my mother was a single mother and she was living through her own traumas. And what that meant was, as a child, I grew up in a very unstable, uncertain home. And so sometimes she was there, sometimes she wasn't, physically, emotionally, mentally. And so the thought of never having consistent love, never having consistent attention or care meant that I became very anxious as a child, thinking that if I'm perfect, I can gain her love, gain her affection. And I believe from a very young age, maybe even before I have physical memories of it, I know I was always trying to be this quiet, reserved, perfect little girl because I wanted her love. I wanted her safety. Because she was in her own traumas, she dated and married men who were unhealthy. And so there was a revolving door of men coming in the home, and I became the one that was the recipient of a lot of the abuse that they would inflict.
Right.
And that was sexual abuse. And so adding on top of this already, I'm not certain when my mom's going to give me love. Now my boundaries have been ruptured people are coming into my space, affecting my body. And now I'm confused of what love really is. And so perfection and being this type A child became my identity, because I thought, okay, if I'm quiet, if I don't ruffle the feathers, if I just try and do what I'm told I need to do, and I'm perfect at it, and my room's perfect, and my clothes are perfect, and my hair, is brushed properly, then I will get that love.
I realized that I was very successful in business, as I'm sure you were, because what would happen is you would get recognition, you'd get bonuses,
Totally.
you'd get a pat on the back, just the
Yes.
success. You did something new, you completed a project. Oh,
Yes.
they must love me. I'm going to do some
Yes.
more. Oh, they must and they don't. But we
No.
don't know that,
Right.
right?
Yeah. For me, absolutely. It was this like, I became the perfect corporate employee. I did all the projects they served to me and more. I served on the volunteer committees. I was leading initiatives. I was speaking to executives. I could confidently, hold myself in a room in a meeting, and was able to stand out in the crowd because, one, I also never said no because I was like,
Right.
I can't say no, or else they're going to think there's something wrong with me. So I'll just take all this on and keep taking it on and keep taking it on. All the while, yes, getting that praise of like, gosh, Mandy's such a great employee. Every year I'm
Right. No matter
boosting.
what we give her, she
Uh-huh.
succeeds.
She
Right. I've
takes
taken
it and she
projects
does
no
it.
one else could make happen, and I made it happen. I can remember having a boss finally, at one point, she called me in her office. She said, Gail, sit down. Sat down. She says, okay, I want you to watch my face and follow me. Watch my lips. I'm like, okay. She went, say no. Right. And I'm like, what? She goes, Gail, you never say no. And I need you at your top, and you're not at your top if you take everything on. Right. And
Yeah,
it really took me a long time to understand that. Right.
that's a hard lesson to learn, especially if you've been growing up in that programming for so long of you're trying to be that way, using that as a coping strategy to get that love. It's hard to say no, because
Right.
that feels like, it can feel like death. Like, what? No, I
Right.
I need to say yes.
Right. Right. It's a very scary thing. And
It is.
so
Yeah.
I had many traumas, and I finally got fired. That's what woke me up to the fact that this life is not the right life for you. And then I needed to do my own journey as to healing myself, because I didn't like who I had become, and learning about personal development, alignment, and accountability and boundaries.
Yeah.
Right. So what happened to you that you finally went, "Oops, this is not right"?
Well, I was a young mother. I had a 3-year-old and like a 1.5-year-old. And I was struggling with being diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic, or type 1.5. So I got it after pregnancies. And my blood sugars were all over the place. And I was in a very stressful corporate job. I was a director, and I had employees, and I had this, worked for a company that was very much, their value was push your employee as hard as possible.
Mhm.
We don't care what else
Right.
happens. Our goal
Right.
is just to
It's
push.
just a commodity. We'll grab another one. Mhm.
Yes, yes. And at the time, my partner was traveling as well. So I not only had this stressful job, but then I came home and I was stressed because oftentimes while he was traveling, I would be single mom with the 2 kids. And again, that perfectionism came in for me as a mother, in that I felt like I can never ask for help. I felt like I needed to be the one to do it all.
Right.
And my health started to really suffer. I started to, my blood sugar started to get all over the place. And there was one night where I woke up in the middle of a sleep because my blood sugar had dropped so low. I was sweating and my heart was racing, and I knew immediately I needed to go get something to eat to bring this up. But it was so low that I had to crawl down the stairs because I couldn't stand up. And every time I did, I was really dizzy or weak. So I'm crawling to the kitchen, sitting on the floor and opening up the refrigerator. And, the cool air is like, oh, feeling so good on my body. And I'm trying to reach things to like bring my blood sugar up. And it was just me and my kids. My partner was traveling at the time. And I just had this epiphany of like, what happens if I don't wake up from this? What happens if my blood sugar gets so low that I don't wake up? And my kids are alone, and then they grow up without a mother. Like my head I start thinking about the trajectory of this.
And the path that you were on was definitely that path.
It was. And I grew up, my mother took her life when I was 14. And so I grew up in my childhood not having a mother, and I knew what that was like. And I just felt like, no, I can't do this to my kids. I can't do this. And it was like the come to Jesus moment of like praying, like, Lord, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know where to go from here. I need help. Please just show me a way. And it was within the next couple of days where I came across a health and wellness program that I joined, and changed my diet and started moving my body and started changing my mindset around food and the food choices I was making. And the food choices I was told I could eat as a diabetic from the conventional medicine industry, which was so wrong. It was like completely wrong. And once I was had done that program for about 30 days, I was able to come off of 75% of my medication. I had mental clarity. I was energized. I could do all the things I wanted to do. And I thought, what is this? Like within a month's time, I am a literally completely different person. And then I got into the world. I went and got educated as a functional nutritional therapy practitioner. And I started to incorporate a holistic lifestyle. And that's really when I started to see the life I was living in this corporate world of success and all the things.
It's so toxic.
It was so toxic. The fluorescent lights, the cubicle farms, the long hours, the stress,
no fresh air.
No, all of a sudden I was like, I felt like an alien. Like I had been plopped into this new awareness that really made me see how toxic my world had been. And that became the starting point for healing.
And that's very interesting, because what happens, at least what happens to me, so, maybe not to everybody, is I become, the toxicity becomes the norm. And I was toxic. Totally. I was a nasty person. I was pretty harsh, right? And it took me a long time to smooth those edges out, because I also was a street kid, a gang kid. And so, I was pretty hard. Pretty hard, and it's all to keep you protected and keep you safe.
Yes.
From a toxic angle.
Yeah, totally.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And this is where we create our own world. And, not knowingly, many times. I was speaking with a friend the other day, and we were talking about cancer. And I know I'm going to get comments on this one. People in my family, let's put it that way, who have come down, the women with cancer, 100% of them came down with cancer, and they were the ones who carried too much weight on their shoulders. They may have been beautiful, lovely people, but they brought in the bread, they cooked the dinner, they cleaned the house, they brought the kids to dance school, they did, and they did not give up, and they carried the world on their shoulders.
Yeah.
Right? Until their body said, stop.
Yes. No more.
Right. Right. And the thing is that without coaching after a double mastectomy, you go back to that same life.
Yeah.
Right. Because no one helps you understand that it's not just food choices, it's not just maybe exercising, but you have this mindset, this type A personality mindset that's going to kill you.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So make your comments if you want. This is my family
Yeah.
experience. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true. I think for me, I don't think I ever fit into that culture. And I had nudgings of that and intuition hits of that, but I was taught at a young age to ignore my intuition and that my intuition was wrong.
Right.
So I never listened. And
Right.
for me it was this idea of, in fact, I was using this analogy with a client earlier this week, and it was, a puzzle. When you have 1,000-piece puzzle, none of the pieces are the same shape, and they all fit together perfectly in this beautiful puzzle. But oftentimes we think our puzzle shape has to be the same as the one next to us or the same above us, because that's what we're supposed to do. That's how we're supposed to fit into this world. And the actual truth is our puzzle piece is meant to be shaped different.
Right. We don't fit together if we're all the same shape.
Right. We don't fit together.
We don't
right.
make a beautiful puzzle.
No, but we're taught in many different ways through many different experiences that we have to be a certain way. And I think for me, once I had that health revelation of like, I need to do something different or else I'm going to be going down a trajectory I don't want to go down, and starting to gain all this awareness, I think it landed in me deeper because I knew at my core, even though I maybe couldn't listen to it yet, I knew in my core I wasn't meant to be in that world. I knew in my core I had a different purpose, but I was going through the motions and I was falling into this big cog of this big cogwheel of like, this is how you go through life. You do this, and we spit you out.
Right.
So,
And right. And at 65, you die because, we've
yeah.
just chewed you up. Yeah, it's a thought came into my mind and then it's gone. So too
Okay.
late. Too late. That kind of happens with me. This whole idea of fitting in and following the corporate line, or it's very military. It's very
Yeah.
military. And it's very factory driven.
Yes.
The first book that I wrote was Authentic Women Have It All. And it was, the hypothesis was that women show up in corporate and you become men to fit in. And you cheat corporate out of the opportunity to become balanced, because you bring a perspective that men don't bring and you squash it.
Yes.
Right.
Totally.
And you're killing yourself.
Yeah.
At the same time. And my hypothesis was that, it's not a dig on men, because you need hunt kill as well as planting. You need them both.
Yeah.
Right. But you need it with discernment, and you need it like the puzzle pieces fitting together.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And so the time for the feminine is coming. If it's actually here.
Yes.
And that's what's happening. Mostly women, though there are many men, are starting to wake up to the fact that this harsh approach of hunt kill is not necessary anymore. We don't live in a cave, and our survival isn't so harsh anymore. Right? It's now time to soften our approach to life and elevate who we are. Right. And look at things from a bunch of different perspectives.
Yeah.
Right. And so you do somatic healing as well. That's where I was going to go with the mind body piece. Right. So the mind body spirit is what I really, really focus on. And I want to share with you what I do now for meditation. I do breath work. Very short, a little breath work to get my balance, right?
Yeah.
My energy balance. I
Yeah.
do 5 or 10 minutes worth of easy exercise to get the body energized. And then I meditate to hone in that energy. When I'm done meditating, if it's been what's called a Kundalini type of meditation, which generates energy, that means
Yeah.
when I'm done, I have excess energy because I've just done energy, energy, energy. So
Yeah.
I'll do another exercise or two to shug off extra energy.
Yeah.
If I do a relaxing meditation, then I don't have to do that, right? And I do a variety of meditations, right? And so that's kind of like a self-somatic approach.
Yes.
Explain to people, because that term is thrown around, and many people don't understand what that is that you do. How did you fall into it?
Yeah.
And what's the benefit?
Yeah, I love somatic experiencing work. I love the somatic work, and I was introduced to it in my own healing. So in my late 30s, I started really experiencing a lot of anxiety and tension in my body. And up to that point, I'd been in therapy off and on for 20 years. Ever since I was 14, essentially, when my mother took her life, I was in and out of therapy. So by my late 30s, I was like, I'm probably good, right? I'm like, what else could I have to work on? But all of a sudden, I was feeling this tension and this anxiety. And it wasn't until I had this really big emotional outburst with my daughter. And I was a parent who never yelled at my kids, never raised my voice. I was always very calm and gentle. And part of that is my natural nature. However, I never allowed myself to feel anger. That was one emotion that was off the table. And my daughter, my young daughter, is the example of what we all should be, because she can feel all the emotions and has this beautiful range from bliss to anger. And she would get into these angry modes, and it would just be like fingernails on a chalkboard for me. It was so uncomfortable. And when she was having an emotional moment, angry, I lost it with her yelling and screaming, and I threw a glass and it shattered on the floor. And that was kind of like my wake up call again to say, something's not right. I knew enough to know that I've been in therapy long enough, but maybe that therapy actually wasn't hitting on the things I needed to really heal. So I was in talk therapy off and on, talking about my story, and I could intellectualize my story
But
back and forth.
Heal it.
But it wasn't doing anything. I could talk about it, but it wasn't doing anything. So when I decided after that experience that I needed to go get help, I thought I need to find a different way to work on this. I need to see what other modalities are out there. And in my search, I came across somatic experiencing and found a practitioner who had been trained in sexual abuse, but also trained in somatic experiencing. And I thought, okay, maybe I'll try this out. I don't know what it is. I had no idea. I went in cold turkey, and in 2.5 years, I worked with that practitioner. I healed more than I did over the last 20 years of talk therapy. It allowed me to understand what was happening in my body. It created a language around it. I could tap into and I could learn how to go into my body, because for so many years, I became just a head. I had disassociated from my body because of the trauma I had experienced.
And talk therapy keeps you in your head.
It keeps you in your head, right? You're intellectualizing your story. You're never going inward to understand. And so with somatic, in that experience with my practitioner, she helped me start to understand how to go into my body, how to find the energy of the experiences that were coming up to be healed. So that anger, where was I feeling that anger? What did it feel like? And we spent a lot of time practicing just holding space, holding attention on that feeling.
Yes, don't ignore it, right? Right.
because we learn to ignore it. We learn to be like, oh, I don't want to feel that. Okay, I'm going to disassociate, or I'm going to numb myself, or I'm going to, go do something different.
Right.
But we don't heal in that way.
Right.
So I had to learn how to just sit with the uncomfortable sensations of anger and rage and just let them be in my body. And that was so uncomfortable.
But you
But
had
as
a right to every single one of those feelings.
I did.
Yes. And that's to give yourself permission for
Yeah.
your body to feel that. And just that alone releases the tension
Yes.
from the feeling. I worked with a client who at the same time was seeing a psychiatrist. And she had said to me, when we talked, we hit on anger. She goes, oh, I don't feel angry. I said, there's never been a time where in your body you've not felt angry. She's like, no. And now she said every reason in the world to be angry. And I said, oh, okay. So I showed up at her house with a bunch of dishes I bought from the dollar store. And I brought her to the backyard, and she had the cement wall. I said, I want you to take this and plate by plate, smash it against the wall. And I want you to scream, F you.
Mm.
And she's like, I can't do that. And I left the dishes there. I said, I'll just leave these right here. When you're ready, they're waiting for you.
Mm.
So she finally did. And then she called me and she said, that felt so good. And I was so angry at you because of the mess I had to clean up afterwards. And I went, good,
Yes.
good. Yes. Yes. No, let's
Yes.
explore that. And that's something that a therapist doesn't do.
When my clients say they're angry, I celebrate that. It's such a good feeling to feel, and has energy around it to help you process what needs to process.
Right.
But we have to learn how to let that be.
Right.
Okay.
Not
To
not
feel it.
to respond to it, but to listen
Yes.
to it. All of your
Yes.
emotions is your body communicating to you that something is wrong.
Yes.
Right. And that's all it's doing. It's the only way your body can talk to you.
Yes. 100%.
Right.
Yes. So
Right.
somatic is really working with your body. It's learning how to understand those sensations, that tension in your chest, or that tightness in your stomach, or the the heat you feel in your body as you start to feel angry. Like, these are all things that we try to ignore, or we're
Right.
taught we should ignore, but really we need to allow them and learn how to sit with them, because they have the medicine we need to heal what needs to
Right.
heal.
And they have a way of telling you what is wrong based on where you've held the energy. So
Mm.
you're holding when you're holding the energy, an event happened and you have a wound, and your mind knows that when this happens, this is where I hurt. So I'm going to send the hurt there.
Yeah.
Right. This right. And so you feel that. And when you do that over and over again, you start to damage that part of your body, because
Yeah.
it's like bumping your car against a tree time and time and time again. The tree isn't going to give, your car is, right?
Yeah.
Right. And what I've learned is by understanding our energy centers and our and our modalities, or different modalities, that I know when a certain part of my body is hurting, what emotion am I hanging on to?
Mm.
That, and sometimes, like just the other day, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And so in that part of my body is supposed to be, so I've been going through something that's ready to release, obviously, lately. And it's like, well, there's that shame and guilt, but I don't know what's going on. So I have a friend who does body talk, and she's a miracle. It's very amazing woman with this.
Mm.
And she's like,
Wonderful.
there's what did she call it? There's a resentment toward yourself there.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, I need to sit with that for a while because I have to figure what resentment am I holding. And it took me a couple of days, and I was like, oh, so we were talking about type A personalities, and I had to remind myself that sometimes I think everything is up to me,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
it's okay for me to let it go.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And as soon as I did that, it's like, oh,
Ah,
so much better.
yeah. Yes.
Right. Right. And this is what somatic healing is all about, is
Yeah.
knowing where and what
Yes.
in your body.
Yeah.
Right.
And it takes practice. I mean, you're not just going to try it one day and be an expert at it because it's like building a muscle. You don't build up your bicep by lifting the weight one time. You have to do it over and over. And
What?
I know, as much as we want to just
Right.
do it one
I
time,
picked up that weight.
as much as we want it to be easy like that, we
Yeah.
do have to have a little bit of patience.
Right.
But when we do it consistently, we do start to learn that language that then we can utilize outside of a session or outside of an experience. And for me, that's what I loved so much about this when I went through it myself, was that I felt empowered to take control of my day-to-day life without needing someone else to tell me what to do. So in talk therapy, it was like, well, I feel like maybe I need to go back and talk more about this and it'll heal it. But when I went to somatic sessions and somatic healing, all of a sudden I'm gaining these tools that then I can use on my own. And
Right.
I'm getting the information I need. I'm not being told, hey, you better do this, or you need to heal this, or blah, blah, blah. It's all being guided based off of what's available in my body and what's ready to be healed and seen and heard and loved and all the things. So that's why I love it so much, because often we don't feel empowered in the healing process if we're doing it in a very conventional way. We feel like we're at the whim of an emotion or a feeling or a body sensation, when in actuality, those are just guiding us. And when
Right.
we learn how to utilize that as a tool, we can be so much more empowered.
Yeah. So much more empowered. And not relying on an outside
Yeah.
chemical to try and balance. One of my concerns with that approach is, I am not a chemistry lab, right? You don't know my body,
Yeah.
right? And you don't
Sure.
know how it's going to react to something,
Yeah.
right? And I do. And one more story, then we can wrap this up. I can I can remember oh, with my children. Now, mothers have a special bond with children.
Mhm.
You and them, that you are still connected for years. And I would bring my children to the pediatrician and say, well, this symptom and this symptom and this symptom, this is what I think the problem is. So my pediatrician thought I was a nurse, right? And when my youngest finally was old enough to move on, her and I had a conversation, and she mentioned, she wanted to know what role I played in the medical field. I said, I just know my children.
Yeah.
I just know my children as I know myself.
Totally.
I will say that
Yes.
I'll go for checkup because, your insurance won't cover you unless you go for your checkup. Right. And I will say no to this, no to that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you need a rubella shot. Well, why? Why do I need that? Well, you need this. I'm like, why? Why do I need that? No, am I healthy? Yes. Then I don't need you to put any drugs in my body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. If I need a little push, that's one thing. But preventative drugs? Seriously? How about food?
Yeah.
How about changing my diet? Let's try
Mhm.
that. Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. So,
It's so true. I feel that way too with my children, that I know instantly if when they're feeling sick or they're having certain symptoms, I can detect pretty confidently what's going on. and I never used to be able to. That came as I learned how to interpret what was happening in my own body and heal the energy that I was holding. And it was like all of a sudden I could now start to become more of a
intuitive,
intuitive healer for my children, not
right.
let alone my clients. But
Right.
I agree with you.
Yeah. And so intuition is a real thing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
one of my most recent book is called Crafting with the K, the Flow Formula. And it's all about the benefits of being a leader in flow. Right. And how amazing you can get your team to be when you're in flow and you get them into flow.
Yes.
There's nothing you can't do. There's nothing you can't do. It's just miraculous. Having had the blessing to be able to do that in my life, right? To have the opportunity to be the type of leader I wanted to be and have free will with my team, and bring them along the way that I felt they should be brought along was amazing. Yes. Amazing. So Mandy, thank you so much for being vulnerable.
Yeah, thank you.
It was a great story. If people want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Well, on Instagram, I'm Mandy L. Harvey. My website is mandylharvey.com. You can find ways to work with me on there. There's some freebies, some free gifts on my website as well. And so Instagram or my website are probably the best ways. I am also on Facebook. I'm just Mandy Harvey there.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And everybody, thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. I know that this one had to have touched you. So if you have any questions or concerns, please do note them. If you loved it, give us a thumbs up. If you know someone who could benefit from this conversation, share it out to them. As always, please do subscribe so that you know every time that there is another event or another podcast coming out. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailcraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.